Hello, and thank you for accepting our invitation to happiness. Ryuho Okawa is a global visionary, renowned spiritual leader, and international best-selling author. With his deep spiritual insight, wisdom, and compassion, Okawa is committed to guide people to true happiness and create a better world. To accomplish this, he founded Happy Science Group in Japan in 1986, which is now a global movement in over 100 countries. His vision and message to the world goes beyond the differences of race and language. Together, throughout this program, we will be exploring ways to attain true happiness from a spiritual perspective and how you can create a better world starting from within. Today's topic is on a very deep and sensitive subject, the subject of terminating life, such as abortion, brain death, coma, and suicide, cause a lot of confusion, mixed emotions, and pain. Our aim here is to offer relief and salvation while giving an explanation from a spiritual perspective in order for those who go through such circumstances to make an educated decision. In general, there are two kinds of death, one by natural causes through old age or illness, and the other by early termination. Of course, we cannot cover everything about these delicate subjects within 30 minutes. However, it is our sincere hope that people will open their eyes to what happens to these souls when they go through early life termination. Before we go deeper, let's ask the people in New York what they think happens to these souls.
Well, you can die inside and just kind of stagnate. You can kind of sell yourself out and forget, the reason you do the things you do. I think that's a kind of a Walking Dead kind of scenario.
I do believe there's something spiritual in death, and I do think there is a part of life that is kept after death. But I don't know if there's actually a physical place we go up into the clouds. I'm still debating on that every day of my life.
It's a tricky one for me because I really struggle. I come from a family of very strong Christian faith, and they all believe in the afterlife, and I really don't know. And I'm honest. I say I don't know what comes next, and if you truly don't know, you can't say with certainty. So I'd like to think the soul leaves the body and goes somewhere else, but I don't know.
First, let's hear from Okawa about eternal life and the truth about human souls.
There are many religious teachings and various kinds of enlightenment at Happy Science. People living in this world have many sufferings. But the most important thing in life is to understand that our souls have eternal life. To acknowledge and understand that our soul is eternal is equivalent to gaining a lifetime of treasure. However, for the people who do not realize that the soul is eternal and think that humans only worry and suffer and end up just dying, this world would be nothing other than a world of suffering. It will be nothing but pure suffering. We should realize that we humans, prior to being born, have splendid and mature souls as children of God and Buddha. And even after we die, our souls continue to exist eternally. Nothing goes in vain during this life of several decades. We were shining souls as children of God and Buddha before being born into this world. And during the decades in this lifetime, accumulating various experiences, we refine our souls even further, transforming and enriching our personalities and characters. By living this life, our souls gain added value. Being born in this era, perhaps there are many people who are experiencing new occupations or jobs that did not exist in their past lives. You must all be gaining new occupational experience that did not exist when you were born in Japan or other countries in your past lives. Being born into this world is a risky gamble for each soul. Originally, souls reside contentedly in heaven, where it is filled with happiness. As souls, we would choose our parents, ask to be their child, wait for our parents to get married on earth, and for our mother to become pregnant. Then we can dwell in her womb. Then, on the 8th or the 9th week, the soul enters the womb. The soul enters the womb around the 9th week, but preparation for birth would have already begun in heaven. And for at least 38 or 40 weeks, or for almost a year, the soul is entrapped in the mother's womb, just like a silkworm wrapped in its cocoon. The mental state of the soul is like this. During this period, accidents such as miscarriages can happen, but the soul cannot complain. Thus, the soul experiences fear of not knowing what will happen. Before birth, about half of all souls are anxious that they might fail in life after being born. The souls are aware that they might fail in their life on earth and go through suffering, and that there is also possibility for them to end up in hell for decades after they die. However, they think that even if half of them end up failing, and they do end up in hell for a few hundred years after death, the opportunity to go through soul training in this modern advanced era is such a rare and exciting experience that it is worth taking the risk of being born. Even if one's life is cut short due to illness in childhood or in a traffic accident, having received a life in this lifetime is a precious experience. It means that the soul as a consciousness has gained a new experience. This is the reason we repeat reincarnation over and over again for dozens, hundreds, or even greater number of times, going through the various patterns of life. We are born into a male body, and other times in a female body, going through a variety of different experiences. For example, a man who was excessively autocratic and violent towards others in his past life may be reborn as a woman so that he can gain the experience of looking back at himself from the opposite standpoint and consider others' feelings. The system of reincarnation allows us to enrich our lives by going through various experiences. As we live in this world, when we come across worries, suffering, and setbacks, we might think, "I want to avoid this. Why do I have to face such hardship? If I were an angel or archangel or an angel of light, I would not have to meet with such suffering. I should be able to live more happily. I might be cursed for having such a hard life." But that is not true. The perspective of this world and the other world is reversed. When viewed from the other world, the life of a person who is undergoing suffering looks thrilling and is considered to be an elite soul that is going through tough training that will strengthen the soul. So we should not just complain about the problem, but consider it as tackling a math or foreign language problem. You should try to think, even though the problem is very difficult, it's challenging and stimulating to my soul. This is, in fact, quite fun. Or, if I work on it for an hour, I may gain that much more strength. However, if you wish to live a life with greater happiness, you should consider advancing your way of thinking a step further. Ultimately, the sense of happiness grows bigger if you could accept the way of thinking that the soul or the spiritual body is your true self, and that the physical body is nothing more than clothing. Being born or dying are equivalent to putting on and taking off your clothes. Death is merely the soul removing or changing its clothing. For example, you put on a suit when you go out to work and take it off when you come home. This returning home is equivalent to returning to the other world or spirit world after death. This is the system of reincarnation. The other world, called the real world, is your original home, your home ground. The body we dwell in this life will perish after about 100 years. However, we should not lament that. I hope you can change your perspective around like this. When we look at our lives in this way, everything in our life starts to look differently. I hope you can accept this spiritual truth and live accordingly. Then, the various hardships and difficulties in this world will become enjoyable.
It is important to know that the essence of a human being is the soul, and the soul has eternal life. Through numerous reincarnations, we accumulate new experiences and attain wisdom that cultivates our souls. Obstacles in life are like math drills. The more we tackle them, the better and wiser we become. Family members, such as our parents, children, spouses, and siblings, are actually souls that are deeply connected to us spiritually. The ties go beyond past, present, and future. We repeat reincarnation together to learn from each other, changing roles and sometimes even gender. We are not born by coincidence and choose to be born under the given circumstances. Realizing this will make our lives even more meaningful.
It was in my late 20s, after I attained spiritual powers, that I spoke to a young woman who told me that her father had died in a traffic accident 5 years ago. After a while, I saw the spirit of her father. He was possessing her from behind. The father spirit then came to me, so I made effort to persuade him and talk to him for about an hour. He was in the exact same condition as when he died in the traffic accident. He was suffering in terrible agony. So I talked with her father spirit, but since traffic accidents happens all of a sudden, of course, he wasn't ready for it. Without any time to think about what would happen to his family, and right in the middle of everything at work, he had suddenly lost his life. For 5 years, the father spirit had wandered about with his skull split open, and a great deal of blood pouring out of his head, saying, "It hurts. Somebody help me." Usually, after you die and become a spirit, there should be no pain or blood at all. People who are studying Happy Science teachings would understand this, and a peaceful world will await those who are aware of this. But when an individual believes 100% that their physical body is who they really are, this is not the case. If they are run over by a dump truck and their body is mangled, pouring with blood, they will believe 100% that that is their true self. Even if you try telling these people that they are now spiritual beings without their physical bodies, and that their physical body has been cremated and is no longer existent, these people who died with such a state of mind will still continue crying in pain because they wouldn't have seen their own funeral. They will still be suffering in pain, covered in blood, in the spirit world. So people who die from an illness or a traffic accident would remain in their critical condition. Likewise, if someone dies of stomach cancer and their corpse is cremated in a crematorium, their physical body no longer exists, and they should not have a stomach to cause them any pain. But the pain of their stomach cancer will stick with them for years after they have passed away. Even people who suffered and died from a heart failure, who had their bodies cremated, will still find themselves short of breath, and will complain of chest pains. In short, these people have lived with minimum spiritual understanding, and they have not cultivated their mind. So these people believe that their spirit is made up of their brain and nerves, just like how the doctors told them. This is their level of enlightenment. To these people, their physical body is who they are, so they continue suffering after death. If they are receiving medical treatments in their last moments, the pain will be passed on to their spiritual body and will stick with them after death. I myself have witnessed many of these situations, so death doesn't relieve your pain. You will still feel the pain.
The soul continues to exist after death. Not understanding this spiritual truth makes it difficult for when it comes time to cross over. We must know that the brain is not what determines human life or death. The soul does. In other words, the brain can be compared to a car and the mind or soul to a driver. We should not be attached to our bodies. We must realize the importance of knowing spiritual truth while still alive on earth and strive to cultivate our minds and souls instead. With this in mind, let us move on to the next lecture that explains what happens to the souls that undergo abortion and organ transplant.
I clearly state that a human being is an existence predestined to die 100%. In other words, we should plan our life based on the fact that we will die someday. I am telling you to construct your lives on the truth that one day we will die. Furthermore, we must know that the world after death does exist. I have stated this repeatedly. Only someone like myself, who have experienced numerous spiritual phenomena, can say this with conviction. Thus, I am making this point whenever I can. Human beings are born while crying and die while crying, or people around the deceased will cry and say farewell. It may be sad, but there is a misunderstanding for both occasions. Why are babies born crying? It would make more sense for them to be born happy and laughing. So why should they cry? The fact is that the soul of a child stays in the mother's womb for 10 months in darkness, waiting to be born into this world. During this time, the child is filled with the sorrow of loneliness, and even worrying whether he or she can be born safely. The child is filled with anxiety and fear, so it experiences a great sense of relief and happiness at birth, which is expressed through crying. The soul of a child worries whether he or she can be born safely, not only in the mother's womb, but since coming to an agreement with the parents-to-be in the heavenly realm, and through the period of preparation for a new life. This is particularly true in a country like modern Japan, where a large number of abortions take place. Some parents want to abort after their baby is already in the mother's womb. The mother may say, "I am pregnant, but I want to keep my job, so I want an abortion." Or the father may say, "I don't want any children," and abort the child. The child's soul may call out to them saying, "That's ridiculous," but unfortunately that voice cannot be heard. Of course, sometimes it can't be helped due to circumstances. But in the case of a loving couple, I hope they would bear and raise the children that they conceive.
Abortion can be one of the most difficult choices in life, and if possible, it is best if you can avoid this decision. However, there are inevitable cases, such as when the mother's life is in danger, sexual assault, and for other physical or economical reasons. Nevertheless, by understanding spiritual truth, the most important thing is to recognize and respect the soul that wanted to be born. We must pray for that soul to return to heaven in peace without any grudge or pain in their hearts. At Happy Science, we offer specific prayers for aborted or miscarried children, as well as prayers for departed loved ones in order to offer salvation to these souls. Let's continue with more from Okawa.
I also believe that there's nothing wrong with organ transplants as long as the donor offers the organ as an expression of love without attachments and out of a desire to help somebody else. However, in most cases, people are unable to acknowledge their death, so they cannot cross over to the other side smoothly after death. These people usually spend a period of time in great confusion without any idea of what has happened to them. Even if they have offered to donate their organs while they were still alive, it is doubtful whether they can fully abandon their sense of belonging to their bodies or organs when it comes to transplant. In most cases, they have a strong attachment to their physical bodies, including organs, so they move into and possess the recipient's bodies. In fact, there are many cases reported where a person who has received a transplant undergoes a total change of character and becomes a different person altogether. You should know the truth behind this phenomenon. Sometimes the recipient's body will reject the donor's organ, but there are also a large number of cases where a person's character changes. This is because the recipient becomes totally possessed by the spirit of the donor. However, it is not easy to remove this possession. The donor's spirit insists that he or she owns the donated organ, which is a somewhat valid claim, so it is difficult to make the spirit leave from the recipient's body. The soul and the body are joined together by the invisible cord called silver cord. But when an organ is transplanted, a different soul will enter the recipient's body, so the recipient's body will house two personalities. If the donor happens to be a good, angelic person, then it is fine. However, there is a high chance of receiving organs from those who are not very good or healthy in the spiritual sense. If someone was to receive a heart from a gangster who had been killed in a shootout, then this person may undergo a major personality change. So nobody would want to receive an organ from an evil person because the donor's evil character may be passed on. Stray spirits can possess people living in this world even without direct physical connection, but an organ transplant will provide a foundation that serves as a strong foothold for them. Spirits who are attached to this world will utilize this foothold to possess the living indefinitely. A part of their consciousness remains with the recipient of the organ, making them extremely difficult to drive out. In this way, organ transplant can be a frightening procedure without an understanding of the spiritual truth. I would like people to have this knowledge in advance.
Organ transplants are believed to be an act of giving, and indeed, there are many people who can be saved. However, when the soul of the donor does not know they have passed away, phenomena such as organ rejection or even a multiple personality disorder might occur. Therefore, without spiritual knowledge, it can be a risky procedure. The donor, recipient, and their families need to understand spiritual truth and be sure not to treat the organ as a material object. Next, let's move on to the subject of suicide.
There are people who do not realize that they are a spiritual being, a soul, even after they have died. I suppose that there are people who commit suicide, thinking that life will become easier if they pass to the other world. These people do not believe the other world exists. They think this world is full of pain, but life ends in this world. So if I die, my debts will disappear, the suffering from personal relationships will disappear, and the pain of being fired from my job will disappear. If I die, then all my problems will be solved. They then jump off a building or commit suicide in another way. It takes these spirits a long time to realize their existence as souls. As a result, even after they have arrived in the next world, they continue to commit suicide by jumping off tall buildings. When they do this, their bodies are smashed by the impact with the ground and blood flows from their wounds. It has the same effect as when they jumped into this world. Their bodies are destroyed and there is blood everywhere. They think, this time I have managed to die. But after a short while, their bodies repair themselves and they return to their original state. They then stand up, climb to the top of the building, and jump off again, repeating this many times. After a while, they tire of this endless repetition and return to the building in this world where they originally committed suicide. They search for someone who looks as though he wishes to die, and possesses him, and they jump together. There are some cliffs by the sea that are famous for the number of suicides that happen there. The spirits of those who have previously committed suicide drag other people to their deaths. They look for someone who is wandering around, deep in worry, then possess him and make him feel that the spirit's emotions are his own, and let him commit suicide. In this way, they continue to increase their numbers until a specific spiritual field is created in that place, which becomes like a kind of hell. So hell can be created in places that are famous as sites for suicides. Not knowing the truth is indeed frightening. There are people who commit suicide without knowing that there is life after death, and there are others who do so while believing they will go to heaven. Unfortunately, both remain unable to enter heaven. Even though you die on earth, life continues in the next world. Your life is eternal, so if you want to return to heaven after you die, you must live with a mind that is in accordance with that of the inhabitants of heaven while you are still on earth. This is the requirement for returning to heaven. If you want to know whether you will go to heaven or not, think about whether you have the same state of mind as the spirits in heaven. Do you think it is possible for people who have been driven into a corner and who die in anguish to return to heaven? Ask yourself this, and you will know the answer for yourself. In Japan, about 30,000 people a year commit suicide. It is a terrible thing, and of these people, approximately 20,000 are middle-aged or seniors who have come to a dead end in their work. There is an urgent need to stop these suicides, but without knowledge of the truth about the spirit world, it is impossible to find a countermeasure. What we must tell people who are thinking about committing suicide is to put aside their pride and vanity, because the only thing they can take back to the other world when they die is their own mind. No matter how hard their financial situation, no matter how their reputation or pride may be destroyed, it is always possible to make a fresh start. If you believe that life is limited to this world, then you will feel your future is hopeless and you may well want to die. However, life continues after death and your suffering is increased tenfold or even hundredfold. I hope that on this occasion, you will reconsider the nobility of humankind and realize the meaning of your soul training here on earth. Please understand how important it is to live on the basis of the knowledge that life after death really does exist.
From the standpoint of eternal life, suicide is not the answer. Life is a school, and yes, it can be challenging. However, it is a training ground for refining our souls. Everything happens in life for a reason. Even if misfortune takes place, the important thing is how we get through tough times. We must understand that we all have purpose in life. And last but not least, never forget that God and angels are watching over and guiding us. God never gives us a burden we cannot handle. Knowing the spiritual truth about suicide makes it simply not worth it. If you or someone you know are depressed and considering suicide, please let us reach out and help. The fact that you still have life means that you can start over. At Happy Science, we offer many teachings related to today's topic. We also offer prayer for departed children, for deceased loved ones, and for ancestors. Please also watch our spiritual animated movie, The Laws of Eternity, which explains life after death and the spirit world in detail. We are here to support you in solving your life problems. Please do not hesitate to reach out. For more information, please contact a Happy Science location near you.
If you'd like to learn more about Okawa and the teachings of Happy Science, visit invitationtohappiness.org or call us at 1-800-710-7777.
We have a big announcement. On Sunday, October 22nd, Okawa will be coming to Toronto, Canada to give a special lecture. It will take place at Weston Harbour Castle, Toronto. All are welcome. Seats are limited. Please make your reservation by going to invitationtohappiness.org or by calling 1-800-710-7777. Once again, thank you for accepting our invitation to happiness. Join us next week for the topic, The Mindset to Grow Through Both Success and Failure, introducing invincible thinking. See you next time. Where do we go when we die? The 9 Dimensions uncovers the mysteries of the afterlife.
The preceding program was sponsored by Happy Science.